How's it going, everybody? Mikey Almighty here today. I'm back with a Mag-Sorc updated video for the Greymore chapter. This is for PvE content, works in veteran, normal, dungeons, trials, and it's also viable for Dragonstar Arena and Maelstrom Arena. It can burn through normal Maelstrom Arena, especially now with the new update. The staves and the weapons are all available during normal. Personally, I didn't see the need to run it on Vet. I have completed it with this build on Vet. However, the extra penetration you get on the back bar with the Maelstrom staff, to me, isn't worth it, because that glyph does not transfer over to the front bar. It's only active while you're on that bar, which is basically your dot bar anyway, so you don't spend a lot of time on it. So you basically lay down the wall of elements and then bar swap back anyway. So I don't see the point or need to run it on Vet. But by all means, if you wish to run it on Vet, all the power to you. So there are going to be not a whole lot of changes to this. This is my first Mag-Sorc PvE build. I already posted one a couple weeks back of my PvP Mag-Sorc, and I will be posting a Maelstrom Arena run with this build after the release of this video, so stay tuned for that one. But first we're going to go over the gear, then skills, and then champion points, along with passives and what you should and shouldn't have. For anybody asked in the comments, I am a vampire. This may change. I honestly don't see the benefits of being a vampire this patch unless you're using vampire skills, which you are not. The main reason I don't run vampire skills is because of I don't like Blood Frenzy personally, and you have to run at stage 2 or higher, in which case the rest of your abilities cost so much more. Yes, you can push your spell damage, but you do not need it with this build. Trust me, you're going to use a mythic item to give you that offset. We don't go a lot in stealth. We don't really need any of these passives. A lot of this stuff only works if you're in stage 3 or higher, or 2 or higher, and we stay in stage 1, so I may be dropping Vampirism very shortly. If I do, I'll post it in comments below to let you guys know if I do drop Vampirism altogether. But you can run Blood Frenzy if you want. Your choice. You will die a lot faster because you're relying on your own heal. Anyway, that out of the way, and that said, let's get into the gear. So this gear setup is optional. You can run it if you like. You don't have to. I'm not saying this is the meta. This is what I run. This is what I choose to use. And it puts out crazy, sustainable, survivable damage. And the reason I say that is because most build videos I see on YouTube these days are all damage, 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 and there's no survivability in it. This build you're going to be able to sustain. You can survive with it. And it deals, I can get 60k DPS on the 21 million target dummy with this setup. So no, you're not pushing 90k. Now I'm sure with a few skill rotation and change out, you could hit 90k with this. I'm not saying that's not viable. I'm saying that if you want to be able to survive while dealing damage for solo content, Maelstrom Arena, Dragonstar Arena, what have you, this build can run it all and has run it all. I've beaten every trial, every dungeon, everything in this, every bit of content that can be done in this game, I have done it with this character. So it is viable. And it's easier to obtain than most sets. First off, we're going to go with the False Gods 5-piece. This is front bar only, so you need to run the staff. Now, that is a hard drop. I understand that. If you want, you can run Mother Sorrow on top of it, which is buyable via any kind of guild trader. You can run the Lightning or Inferno. Inferno will give you more damage, so if you do swap for Lightning, yes, you're a Mag-Sorc and off balance and all that fun stuff. However, Flame does give you more damage. You want to run it Sharpened or Precise. You can run either. Precise is good as well because you're running Mother Sorrow on top of this. So you're also going to want to run Mother Sorrow, but I'm only running a 4-piece, not a 5. If you want to run the 5-piece, you're not going to run a full monster set. that's your choice. So it's False Gods in the front bar with the Inferno Staff, the chest, the waist, and the legs. That's your 5-piece. This gives you, you want to run it also all Divines if you can. I actually did this one and put it in Fuse for a little bit extra Magica, but you'll want all Divines, and I have a couple bot traits that need to be changed as well. But you will want to run this as a 5-piece, 3 body, 1 weapon, or you can go with 3 jewelry, 1 weapon, your choice. I just thought it was easier to get the gear, so I went with the gear. 2-piece spell crit. Mages are minor slayer at all times, increasing your damage zone in trials and arenas by 2. Dungeon trial and arena monsters by 5%. Another 804 spell crit. Also adds a double spell damage for the 5-piece. And reduce the cost of your Magica abilities by 8%. When an enemy you recently damaged dies, you restore 2075 Magica and gain minor expedition for 8 seconds, increasing your movement speed by 30%. This is a sustained piece. This is what it's here for. So, you gain 2k Magica if something dies from this. Running a Destruction Staff with the passives, anything that dies from a Destruction Staff ability, you also regain Magica. This is your sustain, especially for trash mobs. Boss fights, a little harder to sustain. You're going to have to weave in some heavy attacks. Keep your potions up at all times. The usual nonsense you run. Activate synergies, yada yada yada. So you're definitely going to want to run this front bar, because that is your main spammable area, which is where this 5-piece really comes into play. Then you can run, you have 2 other choices. You can run Mother Sorrow, or you can run Stuns, the new set that comes out of the Greymore chapter. Both are equally viable. You can run both, either the 4-piece or the 5-piece. 5-piece will give you more damage, just for the extra penetration, but it doesn't give you the critical. So, realistically, both are evenly matched. I think the difference is about 1,000 DPS one way or the other. But you can run Stuns over Mother Sorrow if you really choose. Your call. The other piece we're wearing right now is Valken Scoria. This is also interchangeable. You want more survivability. If you're running something with solo content, you can run Ice Heart. Your other options with this would be Lambrus. Bear in mind, it did take a reduction in damage because now you cannot proc both storms simultaneously. However, the damage did get a buff, so it's close. It's not far from what it used to be, but it does work for AoE fights. Bear in mind, though, you can only have 1 proc at a time with an 8-second cooldown. This is why I prefer Scoria over that, because Scoria only has a 5-second cooldown, as opposed to the 8-second cooldown Lambrus gives you. So it can proc a little more often, and it hits a little bit harder, I find Valken Scoria does. So, it's up to you. Zons is the other one for single target. This actually outperforms both sets for single target. However, I find you have to be really up close and in your face for it to be viable and work. You will outperform a DPS test with Zons than you would with either one of the other 2 setups. However, I don't like running this for most content. If you have time in a trial or dungeon or whatever, you want to switch it out for the last boss if you're able to stay up close. This will outperform and outdamage everything else. Personally, I like staying at a distance because you are going to be taking a lot more damage on this build, so I try not to run Zons. Because if I can stay the hell away from my enemies, the better. So I actually prefer Scoria over all of them, just because it can proc at a distance and any range. It doesn't have a range. I mean, it does to a point, but I mean, it has to be within your AoE radius anyway. Or dots, damage over time. Grothar is another good set if you do like being up close. This one here does a lot of damage as well. However, it has a 5-second cooldown. So this one actually has the biggest cooldown of the sets. But it has a 5-second cooldown, so I wouldn't recommend this. But if it is an easier set to get, as opposed to Valken Scoria, Zons, or Lambrus. Lambrus is actually fairly easy to get as well. But if you only have Grothar, by all means run it. It is a good DPS set, and it is an AoE set for 8 meters. But if you're going to run this, you might as well run Zons. But for trash mobs, it does work equally fine. That's your monster set selections. We're also running the Thrash and Stranglers. It is the one mythic item that you can run, and we do run on this character just because the damage is undeniably strong with this set. Especially like if you want to melt enemies super fast, I mean, they can't hit you if they're dead. Essentially, that's how we're going to run this. With the 20 stacks of this and fully buffed, we're hitting 8100 spell damage. It's massive, with a shitload of spell crit due to Mother Sorrow. So you hit really hard. If you even wanted to, you could run the extra 5-piece for Mother Sorrow to give you the additional 1857 spell crit and drop Scoria altogether. Do not drop False Gods, because you will want that mag recovery to run with this set. Your recovery is decent, however, you're going to need the extra boost to keep yourself alive. It's just because of the sustain. So that's the gear. But do bear in mind, though, with 20 stacks of Thrash and Stranglers, yeah, your mag or your spell damage is increased by 150 per stack. However, you take 40% more damage, your healing reduced by 40%, and the effectiveness of your damage shield by 40% at 20 stacks. It's 2% per stack. Bear that in mind, which is why I don't run Sororia over False Gods, just because you need to be moving. You try not to take as much damage as you can. Sororia, you've got to keep the stacks up, and it's just harder. False Gods will outperform Sororia with the way this playstyle is. So, unbuffed, this is actually with no food active. We are running Clockwork Citrus Fillet as the food. And basically you can run Trash Pots if you really want to. If you don't have any other option, they are quick slotted on this character at all times. Just because they're easy to get, super cheap, you can run Trash Pots if you so choose. However, if you wish to use Spell Power Potions, you can do that as well, or you can run Tri-Stat. Totally your call. I actually don't have any Tri-Stat other than the Crown ones right now. Tri-Stat is also great. Gives you 100% uptime, especially if you're running it with your medicinal use to give you the uptime. But mag, I mean, it is a lot lower uptime for this, but I mean, if you don't have it, you don't have access to Spell Power Potions or Tripods or whatever, these work equally fine, but don't keep them up all the time. Only use it when you need to. So basically you're going to use it for the Rush of Magica back and the extra sustain for an additional 28 seconds. Once that activates, you're going to need to put in some heavy attacks or activate synergies to give you the extra recovery. So with this, you're going to be running heavy attacks in your rotation. If you're not running this and you're running a regular potion like Spell Power, or just, you can realistically just use Essence of Magica as long as it's crafted and get the extra. Same with Tri-Stat. Tri-Stat will give you 100% uptime, so your recovery is going to increase by 20%, 47.3 seconds with a 45-second cooldown on your potion. With medicinal use, that is. So, skills on this. Where am I to? So, this is our front bar. So this is the Destruction Staff of False Gods, Inferno Staff. Oh, by the way, we also are running, I forgot to mention, we are running the Maelstrom's Inferno on the back bar. You can run any staff on the back bar if you don't have this. As long as it has some kind of flame or lightning, you can realistically run whatever you like on this bar as a Destruction Staff. Because the only reason this is here is our light attacks deal an additional 1353 damage to enemies in our Wall of Elements. But that's down anyway. So realistically, you're going to cast your dots and get the hell off the bar. You're on your main bar anyway. So you don't need that active. Well, you would need that active, sorry. And if you have the Maelstrom Inferno, you keep your dots down at all times anyway. But If you don't have the Maelstroms yet and you're using this build to complete your first run of normal Maelstrom to get the staff, by all means you can run whatever you like here. You can run the Asylum's Lightning Staff. I mean, it doesn't really matter as long as there's something on the back part of Destruction Staff. Lightning Staff would be preferred, actually, so I need to do the run again to get the Lightning Staff. But, I mean, if all you have is Inferno, by all means, run the Inferno. I'm just saying you can use whatever you need on that part. So, on to the skills. Boundless Storm is first. That is in the Storm Calling ability. It's the second one you unlock. Lightning Form morph it to Boundless Storm. Basically put, this is going to increase your physical and spell resistance by 5280, which you're going to need. It does give you a minor expedition buff for 4 seconds. We're not using for that. You can use it if you're in a tight spot and you need to get the hell out of it. That's fine. And it does do damage. So anybody that gets close enough to you, within 5 meters, you're going to deal an additional 898 shock damage every second for 23 seconds. So it is technically a dot, which can proc Valken Scoria because it's technically a damage over time. So keep this up at all times because your physical and spell resistance is low because you're all light armor for the most part. You can run the 5-1-1 if you so choose, if you have access to the medium and heavy helm and shoulders of Valken Scoria, whatever monster that you're running. Second skill on this bar is from the Daedric Summoning skill line is Haunting Curse, morph of Daedric Curse. You want to run Haunting Curse because it procs 3 times. Once on the initial, put on the enemy, and then it procs again at 3.5 seconds, and again when it's finished for another 10.2k damage. And it also damages nearby enemies for 4,400, but you're not really going for that. You're going to want to hit this with your strongest. I only use this on bosses. I don't use this on trash mobs. Just because it costs 2,400 Magica, you really don't need to use it on trash mobs. They die too fast. There's no point. The proc won't go off and you're wasting magic for no reason. Third skill is from Storm Calling. No, sorry, not Storm Calling. It is from Daedric Summoning again. Sorry, that's my bad. Which is Hardened Ward. It's Conjure Ward morphed to Hardened Ward. This is your shield, simply put. This is basically what's going to save your ass from damage 90% of the time. So, even with Thrash and Strangulars with the 40% reduction in the effectiveness of your shields, not the effectiveness, what? Yeah, sorry. It will still take the 9.7k damage over 6 seconds. Now, it doesn't show up in the tooltip. Now, I'm wondering if this is changed. So, at 20 stacks, that should be reduced by 40%. Which means you would think that it would absorb 40% less magic. However, it doesn't show that. But, and I'm thinking this is why. So your damage strength is capped by 60% of your max health. The strength is judged by the amount of magic you have. So based on the amount of magic you have, this can be higher or lower, but it's capped at 60%. So, I think, realistically speaking, this is already above our max cap anyway. It's just capped at 60%. So when it gets reduced, it's reducing from its max value, not the 60%. So realistically, we may still have a 9.7k damage shield regardless of the 20 stacks or not. Unless it's just not showing it in the tooltip. I couldn't find it, couldn't see it, so obviously I'm not sure 100% on that, don't quote me. Next ability in the line is your pet. This will be both barred. You have 2 options. For most and all content, I run the Vault of Familiar. For 2 reasons. 1, he doesn't get in your bloody face like the Winged Twilight does. I can't stand it. That's a personal preference. This one will outperform damage. However, I do like this one better because it has a stun. So, for running trash mobs and most content, this one here actually acts as an AoE. So, when you activate the ability, you'll see on Pulse. That'll activate for 10 seconds. The last hit stuns whatever enemies are hit by it. So, technically it's an AoE stun, which can work for trash mobs. You can stand them in place. If you are doing single target and you're running with a decent group, you can run the Twilight Tormentor. This one will outperform damage-wise for single target. However, once the enemy drops below 50% health, this thing basically just sits there and does whatever the default damage is. You only activate him at 50% and above. Anything below that, you're basically casting an additional 2,800 Magica for no reason, because it's not doing any extra damage. Last ability on this bar is in the Destruction Staff line. It is the very first skill you unlock. It's Force Shock, morph it to Force Pulse. This essentially is your spammable, and it does a lot of damage. And as a Destruction Staff ability, in your passives, when you kill an enemy with a Destruction Staff ability, you gain 3,600 Magica. Stacked on top of False Gods, you have over 5, almost 6, no, it is 6. It's over 6k magic regen every time something dies. Because obviously it has to be damaged from False Gods for you to actually kill it in the first place. So with False Gods, you're gaining an additional 2,075 Magica when something dies. And if you kill it with the Destruction Staff ability, like Force Pulse for example, you gain an additional 3,600 just by the passives. So that's a massive, massive sustain. So that is your main bar skills. Your ultimate on this one is also optional. You can run one of 3. Personally, I like the Elemental Rage. It is basically Elemental Storm morphed to Elemental Rage. This is a massive damage, and it hits super hard. With the stacks up and with Crit Surge active, just Crit Surge alone, it hits for 10k every second for 7 seconds. With the 20 stacks of Thrashing Stranglers, putting your spell damage to over 8k, this hits for something like 20,000 damage a second for 7 seconds. That will wipe out the room super fast. You can run Shooting Star on here. The initial impact will hit for something like 22k, and then it's an additional 8k every second after that for 13 seconds. Hits extremely hard. Atronach for single target only. This is no good for AoE. It is great for boss fights, and if you have to use single target, the Storm Atro will outperform every single ultimate because it lasts longer and does more damage. It also costs the same amount as Shooting Star. It's actually a little, I don't know, it's the exact same. So it costs 176 ultimate, which means you can have a massive uptime on this. And it deals a truckload of damage. Over the 21 seconds, it deals 150,000 damage. That's a lot of damage. Now, if you're going for burst, yes, go for Shooting Star, or you're going for Elemental Rage. It will do damage faster. However, this will do damage for a longer time. Damage per second, DPS. That's what it stands for. The longer your ultimate is up, the more damage it's doing per second, the higher your damage per second is. Which is how people get high DPS. But that is your choices for the front bar. You can run either one of these 3. Your choice. Back bar, this is the Maelstrom Staff. Obviously, Wall of Elements. Technically, it's Wall of Fire. It's in the Destruction Staff line. It is the second ability you unlock. It's Unstable Wall of Elements. It's Unstable Wall of Fire because we have a Flame Staff, but it's Wall of Elements morphed. Simply put, it's the damage over time. 800 and something magic. That is also a lot higher once we have the stacks up. And we have proc on. It hits fairly hard. It also explodes when it's finally done, dealing additional damage with fire. You can also run the Lightning Staff. Unstable Wall stuns enemies and concuss enemies off balance. It deals an additional damage and burn enemies if it's Wall of Fire. So, I mean, for higher damage, you actually want to go with a Flame Staff. But you do more damage if enemies are off balance, so it's a trade-off. You can run other Unstable Wall of Storms with Lightning Staff, or Unstable Wall of Fire. Personal choice. Do whichever one you see fit. Next ability on the bar is Lightning Flood. This is in the Storm Calling. Third ability you unlock. It's Lightning Splash, morph to Lightning Flood. Another damage over time. Create a storm of energy at a target location, dealing 1580 shock damage to enemies in the area every second for 10 seconds. You can also have an ally activate the conduit. Synergy dealing an additional 72-97 shock damage to the enemies around them. Pretty decent attack. It does a lot of damage over time. You keep this on the ground. Same with your Wall of Elements all the time. Next ability is Crit Surge. This is our spell and critical damage buff. It's in Storm Calling, 4th ability to unlock. It's Surge, morphic to Critical Surge. This is also your heal. So, gauge you major brutality and sorcery, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 20% for 33 seconds. This is so you don't have to run spell power pots. So you can run tri-pots or max mag pots, whichever one you see fit. While active, dealing critical damage heals you for 3,300 health. The effect can occur once every second. So if you're running with a botch healer, or you're running solo with 3 DPS in a tank, or whatever you have and you don't have a healer, or you're just outside the range of the healer's abilities because you don't want to fight up close to the boss, this will self-heal you as long as you do damage, which as a DPS you should be anyway. Last ability on the bar, Mystic Orb. It is in the Undaunted skill line. Where is Undaunted? There's Undaunted. Last ability to unlock, you will need to have Undaunted level 7 to unlock this. Starts off with Necrotic Orb, morph it to Mystic Orb. The other one's a heal, you don't want that. Your healer is running that, not you. Protect the orb in front of you, dealing 1,049 magic damage every half a second. So every second, that's doubled. So it's additionally 29.2 damage. Allies can actually activate a synergy on it, which will give them resource back. And it also deals damage and restore 3960 magic or stamina to the ally, whichever one's maximum is higher. So if you're running with a bunch of DPS or a healer that's running the other version of Mystic Orb, every time you activate the synergy, you restore 4k Magica. Always activate your synergies for the love of God. I see a lot of DPS running dungeons and will not activate a synergy. That's how you get your resources back. Make sure you activate them whenever they're available to you. Your DPS will drop slightly for activating all the synergies, but your sustain will go through the roof. Please activate the synergies. Also, your passives in here also help. So increase your max health, max stamina, magic by 2% for each type. I'm wearing one of each, so 511. So our current bonus is 6% additional. Undaunted command. Activate an ally's synergy. You restore 4% of your max stamina and magica. So just for activating it, if you activate this one, you get an additional 4k. Activate this, just by activating any synergies, you get an additional amount back. Always activate the synergies. Just because tanks do it, doesn't mean DPS can't activate your synergies. Obviously your pets on both bars. Ultimate on this bar, if you're not running the Atronach on the front bar, you should run it on the back, just so you have the trade-off. This should be on your bar regardless. It hits super hard. Always have it on. And if you're doing single target, use this. Mobs, use this. Whichever one, situational. Passives, you're going to want to have your passives. You could also, if you really wanted to, you could switch out Haunting Curse for Crystal Frags. It does hit harder, but your pets will hit less. But, however, this will proc super often, and it hits a lot harder. So, I mean, you could realistically switch that for that, and you would be fine for doing so. It hits super hard, and it procs really fast. So, if you have that active instead of Haunting Curse, then you will benefit from the passives from here. Unholy Knowledge, which you should have anyway, because that will give you your max stats regardless of what you have slotted. Blood Magic, when you hit an enemy with a dark magic, or with a directly applied dark magic ability, and that counts for Crystal Frags, you heal, so another self-heal. This effect scales off your max health and occur once every 0.5 seconds. Keep that on if you're using Crystal Frags. If you're not using Crystal Frags in this rotation, you do not need these passives. Well, you will need this one, but not the rest. After blocking attack, your next health or magic and stamina ability costs 15% less. You don't block a whole lot, You can, obviously, but good common practice to block. But if you're not blocking much, you find your playstyle doesn't require you to block a whole lot, by all means don't even bother, but I have it in there anyway. When you cast a dark magic ability, you gain minor prophecy to you and your group, increasing your spell crit rating by 1320 for 20 seconds. So every time you cast Crystal Frags, your spell crit goes up by an additional 1320. Great skill to have, which means your next casted Crystal Frags within 20 seconds will hit harder than your initial one because your spell crit rating is higher. Daedric Summoning, you want all the passives in here. When a pet dies, which means when your Atronach on this bar goes down, you restore Magica. Reduce the cost of your ultimate by 15%. That's a no-brainer. Have it anyway. That's regardless whether an enemy is equipped, by the way. Increase your health, stamina, and stamina recovery by 20% while you have a Daedric Summoning ability slotted, which you do. You have your pet. Increase your max health by 8% while you have a Daedric Summoning pet active, which you do all the time. Have your passives. Storm Calling, increase your mag recovery, physical and shock damage, which regardless of whether you have anything equipped or not. Increase your damage done against enemies with by 1% for every 10% of current health they have. So, at 100% health, they're going to do 10% damage, 10% more. At 90%, you're going to do 9%, 80%, 8%, so on, so on, so on. Increase your weapon and spell damage by 2% for each sorcerer ability slotted. We use a lot of sorcery abilities. Pretty much our entire bar minus one skill. Two, sorry, because we only use. But on the back bar, you are using a couple more. So you get 8%. If you want to run more, you can obviously use a different one. You can run something else. You can run Mage's Wrath as an execute if you want, of a Boundless Storm. So on, so on. There's a ton of different, interpretations you can run with this. Destruction Staff, you're going to want all the passives in here just because of the amount of bonuses. Triforce, flame damage is increased by 12% additional damage, which we're running Flame Staff. Destruction Staff abilities ignore 10% of enemy spell resistance. Increased chance to apply a burn, concuss, or chilled status effect by 100%. And a Flame Staff increases your damage done with single target abilities, which is Force Pulse, by 8%, so that hits 8% harder. When you kill an enemy with a Destruction Staff ability, you gain an additional 3600 Magica, no-brainer. You're using Wall of Elements, so if you die by that, Elemental Range, or Force Pulse, you will regain magic. Light Armor, you want all the passives in here, and the first two in Heavy. You can technically use this one. Not massively needed, but you can. Vampire, if you are a vampire, you're going to want to run a couple of these, but not really, and like I said, that may drop at some point. Other than that, it's just, your Undaunted passives and obviously your racial passives, and you will want medicinal use when using a potion. Resulting effect lasts 30% longer. You will want that. That keeps your potions at 100% uptime. I think that is it. We are running the Shadow Among the Stone. We are Vampire Stage 1. We will not be keeping that, I don't think. And 64 points in the Magica. So overall, we are running at 34.8k max Magica with 1200 recovery. That's decent. Max health 16k, so we won't get one shot by most mechanics. Health recovery 798, which is a good amount. Even for Stage 1 Vampire, that is still a lot of recovery. Max stam 10k stam and 617 stam recovery. We don't use a whole lot of stam, however you will be dodge rolling from time to time, and that does help you quite a bit. Spell damage unbuffed, we're sitting at 2420 with False Gods and the 20 stacks, and Crit Surge active we are at 8100, which is a massive amount, and we're also at 69% crit. That's it for the skills and gear. We shall go into the champion points. I'm going to go over these fairly quickly. 34 in the Warlord, 2 in the Sprinter, 9 in the Siphoner, 75 Tenacity, 75 Arcanist, 72 into Tumbling, and 3 into Shadow Ward. Blue Tree, this is where your damage comes from. 72 into Elfborn, give you that extra critical damage, which you're going to want. Spell Erosion, increase your spell penetration. Elemental Expert, more Frost, Flame, and Shock damage. Staff Expert, Master at Arms for the Crystal Frags, and Thaumaturge for the damage over time. We do a shitload of damage over time, so keep this as high as you can. 75 is good. You can go 72. 72 will put you at 23%. I just had a couple extra points, I didn't know where else to put them. 72 into Ironclad, 12 into Light Armor, 56 in the Thick Skinned, 57 Elemental Defender, 57 in the Hardy. This is our highest stack tree, just so we don't take a crap load of damage. 15 Quick Recovery, 1 in the Bastion, and that is it. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. This is also an 810 spec. If you don't have those many, then you can by all means assort these as accordingly to however many CP you have. However, your damage will drop. Certain things will change if you do so. I believe that is it. I will end the video here. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any other comments or concerns or things you may think I might change, by all means post it in the video. Also, if you do not wish to run the Thrash Stranglers, you can do that as well. Run 5-piece Mother Sorrow, or you can run 5-piece stuns here instead, if you do not have access to the Thrash Stranglers. I forgot to mention that. Both of these sets are viable. This one is craftable, so it's much easier to get. False Gods comes from Sunspire. Normal, you can run it on Vet to get Perfected if you're able to. Perfected will give you a little bit more of a bonus, but bonus aside, normal is just fine. You want to run all Divines if possible. And that is about it. Alright everybody, if you liked the video, please like, share, subscribe. I will be trying to post weekly videos if possible. Keep you guys informed. If you would like a video posted of a specific build, by all means let me know. I'm trying to redo my Stamina Nightblade, because Stamina Nightblades are getting a big buff this time for PvP. Stay tuned. I will have a Maelstrom run available very shortly. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one.